in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and although that was a comedy, it was a comedy that understood Arthurian fantasy and used it as a mirror to reflect the jokes. It was there in John Boorman's film Excalibur, although that seemed uninterested in the characters as people and mostly succeeded, it seemed to me when I saw it, on the spectacle. I don't remember what the first book I bought by John and Kathleen Matthews was, although I do remember that I bought it in a magical bookshop near the British Museum, and that its subject was, unsurprisingly for John or Kathleen, Celtic magical traditions. Wikipedia and Google were no help when I went to find out which book it could have been. The couple have written so many books, together and alone. What I mostly remember was how useful it was. The year was 1988, and I was researching magical traditions for The Books of Magic, a 4-part comic I would write for DC Comics, and I was getting slightly discouraged. I had bought a shelf of magical books as research and found them dull, unconvincing, and often faintly embarrassed, as if the people writing them were unable to shake the feeling that what they were writing was fundamentally silly. I strongly suspected I could make up better and more convincing magical systems than the ones I was being offered. The book by John and Kathleen was the opposite of these. It felt grounded and convincing, was well-researched and well-written, and was never less than interesting. It was one of the inspirations for the third part of Books of Magic, the one illustrated by the astonishing Charles Vess. John, Kathleen, and I shared interests in Arthurian and Celtic tales, in the magical traditions of the British Isles, which are never as old as you might imagine, unless they are, in the work of the brilliant British novelist John James. His novels, Wotan, about a Greek trader called Photinus, whose exploits inspire the legends of Odin, and Not for All the Gold in Ireland, in which Photinus inadvertently creates many of the finest stories of Celtic mythology, are two of the best things I've read. The first time I talked to John and Kathleen in person, in 2013, it was about their work restoring James's unpublished final novel, The Fourth Guinevere, and their plan to bring it into print. John Matthews is an expert on matters Arthurian. He knows his stuff. He's written fact and he's written fiction. He's written for children and for adults. In this book, he has assembled for us a new Mort d'Arthur. He has taken some of the stories that Mallory didn't retell and has collected them together to show us a whole new set of tales of Merlin, of Arthur, and of his knights. In doing this, he makes something new and unusual, as if we are allowed to step through a mirror into another world in which these are the famous Arthurian stories, the ones that have always been retold and evoked. Like the best Arthurian stories, they contain chivalry, knights on horseback, swordplay, magic, and noble heroes and beautiful women. But there is a feeling of freshness to them that I love. What I enjoy most about them is that they do not in any way feel like the leavings, the stories that weren't good enough to make the final cut, the B-list. These are tales, for the most part unknown to me, with the freshness and life of the best of Mallory's retellings. Here we might encounter a young King Arthur in disguise as the Knight of the Parrot, or a young Lancelot on a quest for his identity which involves enough magic, high adventure, murderous tourneys, and enthusiastic sexual dalliances to make Game of Thrones look positively anemic. And these stories also remind us just how much George R.R. Martin's most famous sequence of books owes to the Mort d'Arthur. The Arthurian tales are in the DNA of Westeros just as much as the Wars of the Roses. John Matthews's authorial voice is well chosen. It makes the stories feel old, which they are, but it is still cheerfully contemporary in attitude, while never sacrificing clarity for either cod archaism or current phrasing. You will not need the 2-volume complete Oxford English Dictionary to read this book. It is of now and of then, much like the stories. They are old, but still they speak to us. For almost 600 years after Mallory's time, these tales feel like they still exist in a glorious present.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.